rejoice, mid-Advent, Gaudete, mid-Lent, Laetare, we have the rose only twice a year. We are made for joy. I remember hearing that comment way back in 1974 from the novice master at La Trappe. It was the day of the Transfiguration, the 6th of August. Nous avons besoin de bonheur. We need. Now, bonheur is good hour, happiness. What is joy? The key is actually in the liturgical texts themselves today. An essential ingredient without which there is no joy is peace. Do you know that as we go through the game of time, we ourselves are our own worst enemies? We create absence of peace by creating what we think are conditions for joy. And so, psychologically, we will not have joy until such and such happens. Even 4 centuries before the Incarnation, the ancient Greek philosophies of the Stoics and Epicureans and Cynics had understood certain basic human truths. We have already in the 400s Diogenes, who had nothing, and I mean nothing. But he thought, and he thought hard. He lived from what he found. His place of abode was a barrel. He became known because of his apparent eccentricity and yet interesting wisdom. One day, none other than the emperor himself, Alexander, came towards Corinth and wanted to meet this man and asked him calmly and politely, "Is there anything you need?" He wanted to help him. And the philosopher answered back from his barrel, "If you could just remove yourself from my sun." One day he saw a child at a fountain, and he was drinking water just from his hands. And he made this reflection between himself and his soul: that means I have still one item too many. And he broke in pieces the vessel which hitherto he'd used to drink with. One day he was found in the streets of Athens, the Oxford of the time. He had this lantern in his hand, and people were intrigued by this man in midsummer and midday carrying a lit lantern in his hand in Athens. And eventually they got to the bottom of the matter and got from him this bit of information, that the motive was that he was looking for an intelligent human being. As we go through the centuries, we find many people coming across the same eternal problem of man, the pain of the soul. In days of old, it was presumed that one lived and died in prayer. It was presumed that God existed, and that therefore being on the right side of God was an ingredient of life and death. And so certain provisions were made all through the centuries, essentially until our time. There was, in France, a whole rite of dying. The whole family would be united, and the person about to die was expected to ask forgiveness of everyone that he might have wronged. One never died alone. And there was a whole interrogation. Indeed, there is one case where they were asking the person about to die, "Do you believe in God?" "I do." "Do you believe in the church?" "I do." And on they went with a tirade, and he said patiently, "I do," until he came to the last question, and he just answered, "I believe in everything except doctors." And he petered out. But Blaise Pascal has this comment: "On meurt seul." One dies alone. Alone. And in the context of the time, that hit hard. This season, we are also going to probably be our own worst enemy. In sacrificial mode, it is true, because we have many things to think of, or so we believe. But actually, I would like you to reflect on what perhaps would be good for you and good for those around you if you want peace this season. First of all, you parents, especially parents with little ones, pray the Holy Spirit with regard to what you give them. If you give certain things, you may find that it will calm the child down, but you may find that actually you're starting to lose your child. With regard to what we need to buy, one rule of thumb is this: as you pass by the shops and something catches your eye which you like for yourself, it's probably something that will please something who's similar to you as well. And if you put yourself in your child mode, because we're all big children, you might also find that helps with a child's present. But be careful if you encourage your children to have equipment which actually disengages their soul from reality and actually from yourself. It's not good to give always what really a child thinks is good for him, because it's not, if it's going to be in the long run contaminating him and changing his mind, because we are psychologically altered by what we engage in over a long period. In the experience of mankind, it has been picked up by all, from the pagan philosophers to our time, that one ingredient of peace is tranquility, and that without tranquility we cannot have joy, because the agitated soul is restless, and we need to be comfortable within our own skin and able, yes, even like those before the incarnation, to enjoy the simple things that we have without any other need. John Ruskin, who died in 1900, had this to say, which we might also take to heart, because it's just human truth, but valid. All real and wholesome enjoyments possible to man have been just as possible to him since first he was made of the earth, as they are now. And they are possible to him chiefly in peace. to watch the corn grow and the blossoms set, to draw hard breath over ploughshare or spade, to read, notice, to read, to think. By the way, that's not letting your thought be done by a machine. To think means to think for oneself and to be free. To think, to love, and if there is no love in your heart, you will never ever, no matter what you have in your hand, have either peace or joy. There is no winner in a lasting quarrel. To hope, he says, well, that means there is an ingredient of the supernatural order, and he goes on to pray. These are the things that make men happy. And so, my friends, think on these things this last moment of Advent. In the name of the Lord, I would ask you to let the Lord have his birthday today. I mean, to have this preparation precisely what he wants as regards the feasting of the Incarnation. He wants room in the inn. He wants a heart in peace and in love. And for that to happen, we need sometimes to simplify. Because there are things invisible, sometimes more important than the last bit of tinsel. I just conclude. The real meaning of Advent is actually of a different order altogether. It's the coming of Jesus at the end of our life and of time. And only yesterday it hit me hard. Somebody who now and again would have been praying here and would actually stayed with me for a good while, suddenly petered out a week yesterday. I think the heart gave in the heart of night, quite unexpectedly. And then one realized what it would be to go to sleep and suddenly to be awoken by angels or whatever. Where am I? I didn't have time to prepare. Fortunately, this lassie was found in bed with her rosary beads in her hand. A friend of mine commented yesterday as we were putting her to rest, it was